Well, welcome everybody. Let's just take 1 or 2 more minutes while people are signing on and we'll get started. Well, hello again. Great to have you with us today, and thanks for being with us over your lunch hour. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Alan Weber. I work with MU's Center for Regenerative Agriculture in the Circle program. And as those of you on the call today know, as an enrollee of Circle, our purpose of our program is to not only incentivize new conservation practices on your farm, but also to help understand what commercial carbon programs are available, which might help you to be able to monetize those soil carbon assets. So we are starting our Carbon Stench Lunch and Learn webinar series today. This is the first of three, and happy to have Russell Booth with us from Indigo Ag. Before introducing Russell, though, just a couple of things. First of all, as I just mentioned, this is the first of three. So if you haven't registered for next week, a little bit later in the session today, we'll drop in the chat, which you can access there from your menu, a registration link to be able to sign up for week 2 or 3 if you haven't already done so. It'll be the same day and same time each week. So Thursdays at noon, next week on the 11th, as well as the 18th. Uh, Corn is probably drying down a little bit faster than we want it to here in the state of Missouri. But hopefully you can listen to us from the seat of the combine, grain cart, or wherever you may be. Second thing is that we've really designed, we think, the webinar series to be condensed down and efficient. So Russell is just going to take about 20 minutes to overview Indigo as well as their program and leave at least half the time to be able to ask questions. So just as a quick reminder in terms of how to ask questions today, first option would be able to click on the Q&A button, which is on your menu bar, typically there at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that button, it will actually open up a window which allows you to type your question in, and then we will ask Russell to be able to answer that live, or we'll type a response to you. And just know that you can ask your question anytime throughout the presentation today. The second option, if you would prefer to be able to ask your question live, right next to the Q&A button is the raise hand button. If you click on that, it will notify me. I'll see that, and just know that whenever we get that opportune time, I'll go ahead and prompt you to unmute your mic, and then you can be able to dialogue direct back and forth with Russell. So let's go ahead and get started with our session today, and let me introduce Russell Booth. Russell is the Sustainable Acres Business Development Manager for Indigo Ag. Resides in Arlington, Tennessee, where he is now focused on building revenue opportunities for producers through both collaborations as well as partnerships. So his goal is to connect you as a grower with opportunities to differentiate your operation while building soil health as well as resiliency in your soils. And with that, Russell, if you could please take the floor.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate the introductions and excited for the opportunity to speak with the group of CRLC growers that have joined us today. We can go ahead and transition to the next slide as I go into my intros. As Alan did so elegantly put kind of what I do for Indigo, a little bit more about me and what brings me here is essentially impacting not only farm profitability, but natural resources at a really, really unique level. Growers are the stewards of the land and have a lot to contend with in the biological markets that they deal with from year to year. So that's tough enough. So anytime we can drive additional dollars to the farm gate is great resources that can be poured back into not only farms but soil health and communities that those go along with. So with that said, we're looking at where Indigo is headed and what they're building. we're here to talk about carbon today. But it's important to recognize what's in front of you as a producer. There is an ecosystem of opportunities that are being developed, and number of them are at various stages. So carbon, what we're talking about today is the offset space, where a producer adopts a practice on a field. They share some data and information with our platform, and then we go out and get a buyer to invest in that offset. The others that you see are source, or what we call scope 3 or insetting. Indigo refers to them as source opportunities. Those are where corporations are looking at their supply chains and making significant changes to be more sustainable, and not only from a profitability standpoint, but what is their impact on the environment and these natural resources that they are sharing with the world. Um, Finally, there's also water impact opportunities. We are working with companies like Google to bring these opportunities to the forefront. We've started in Oklahoma, but also have in scope to work on some water deals in the state of Texas, and actually Missouri as well, hopefully in the very near future. What those are coming from are organizations like Google or anybody that wants to put in a data center. A lot of those take a lot of water to cool those data centers. So now there's another emerging opportunity in the form of what does the water impact have when you're looking at things like cover cropping and no-till and that sort of thing. And then finally, 45Z. It looks like those have been included in the big beautiful bill. Everything's moving towards potentially having alignment and approval to pursue some of those at the end of this year, from what we're hearing internally. And Indigo is building programs around that. And it's important to know that we will never lock you into anything, or lock you out of it. With Indigo, you get data portability. The grower owns their data. They get to make a decision on what to do with it. Carbon's kind of that front door, but you could flex into any of these other opportunities as they become available to you in the marketplace, providing the grower a unique autonomy and opportunity to really drive where they want to take these returns, or in the form of sustainable market opportunities. You can go to the next slide, please. So this is a good overview of how do agricultural carbon credits work. Despite all the change in administration, those sort of things, there are corporations that have made some big claims. These corporations are publicly traded. They've gone out and said, we want to be net neutral or make an impact by 2030, 2050. I'll anchor to 2030, as that's in the next 5-year window of what's ahead of us. Growers are adopting new practices, some already doing practices, but others may be starting, and that both sequester soil or abate the emissions that come off of their operation. And then again, Indigo works in their processes to produce the carbon credits, and we take those and sell them to buyers such as JP Morgan Chase and Microsoft. And so again, just wanted to kind of level set, how does a carbon credit market work? It is, with Indigo, a voluntary market. Growers are voluntarily participating, and we have a team working on the demand side and sourcing buyers that are voluntarily purchasing these credits through a negotiation process. Next slide, please. So Indigo works with Dascent as our model of choice. It's a biogeochemical model, and all of this has been developed under our soil enrichment protocol with Climate Action Reserve. It's important we anchor to this when it comes to Indigo and carbon by Indigo, just because this is what has allowed us to command premium prices in the marketplace and really go out and secure opportunities for growers in the form of year-over-year returns. So what Climate Action does, it's essentially a third-party verifier that comes in and looks at our protocol year over year and says, hey, yes, you are abiding by this, these regulations and these parameters that were put in place. They audit us after we've also done a self-audit process. This builds confidence in the marketplace to go out and sell these credits to a buyer, and the buyers have the confidence that what they're purchasing has actually made an impact, not only at the farm or field level, but also from a standpoint of sequestering carbon. Next slide, please. So more on what Indigo delivers. This is straight from our leadership's eyes and ears. This is what they see is in front of us. Indigo is an independent new money revenue source, meaning um, what we're paying out to growers, excuse me, is coming directly from buyers. We don't have any large grants or anything like that that we're waiting on approval for. Um, this is truly a third-party voluntary marketplace that we're developing, and it's new money hitting the pockets of growers that we've never really seen before, especially when you talk about dollars flowing from JP Morgan Chase or big tech companies like Google and Microsoft. Again, our competitive advantage is that verified and registry issued carbon credit that provides high integrity and scientific rigor behind it, providing the confidence for both grower and buyer to participate. Everything we sell, 75% of the average carbon credit price always goes back to the grower. That allows us to have a skin in the game, if you will. As the prices increase, we can share that upside with the grower. So it incentivizes us to go out and get as much monetary return as possible. And then finally, as you kind of saw on that first slide, allowing for farmer autonomy, farmer choice in all of this. We are committed to allowing the farmer to choose what they want to do with these offsets, whether it be that to be the form that they want to transact on, or maybe an inset opportunity comes available through a big CPG in your backyard, and you want to pursue that in the Scope 3 space, or one of those water 45Z deals. So again, allowing the grower the flexibility to leverage the power of that practice that they now have on their farm and place it in an opportunity that makes the most sense for them. Next slide, please. I wanted to share a little bit more of the buyers that are behind who is buying these carbon credits, if you will. So I'm not going to go through all the names here, but this just gives you a good example of who are we working with, who is buying these, and where are they going. And all indications are we have strong line of sight to some long-term deals with some of these players on the list. So really excited to see that information and news be shared as we move forward into further into the harvest season, but also into the winter months, where demand season really picks up for our team that works with the buyers. Um, so the other example I just want to call out that's not on the list, if anybody does enjoy adult beverage from time to time, New Belgium Brewing is another buyer of our credits. That's just the best example I can tell you to find in a grocery store. If you ever walk through the beer section, you catch a box of Fat Tire or something like that, you'll see a sustainably sourced sort of monogram, if you will, and they have done that through the ability to do that has been through the purchase of a voluntary carbon credit like Indigo's. So again, just a good kind of idea of where we see this market developing and why these companies are wanting to invest and how they're going to utilize some of these investments going forward. Next slide, please. Finally, I wanted to touch on the water piece. So that is another up and coming opportunity that was laid out at the beginning. We not only generate carbon credits and have paid $16 million of private money back to farmers, but using the same data and information, we can also quantify reduced water runoff. And through quantifying that, we now have another opportunity that large tech companies may be interested in as they invest in these data centers across the US. So as we all have heard, artificial intelligence, with that is going to come large needs for data, and there's going to be a multitude of solutions there, but keeping eyes and ears on our natural resources so we're all keenly good stewards of those is going to be an opportunity where we see this heading. So obviously, besides the main reasons farmers should be looking at these practices, improving soil health, more stable crop yields year to year, and then generating more biodiversity and potentially larger economic return moving forward within their operations is key, especially as we look at current farm economics, prices of commodities, and the inputs that we still have to pay for things like diesel and that sort of thing. So, next slide, please. So with that said, that's just an overview of Indigo, what we're working towards and what we're delivering. With this, I wanted to kind of get a little bit into more Carbon by Indigo and the program. And then I have one last bucket we'll go through, and then we can open it up for questions. So here, I'm not going to go through all of them, but wanted to share just a high-level overview of what we've been talking about and some of our program features. More value, we share the upside with the grower. We're not tying this to any products or anything like that. There are a new practice change where some of these enhanced efficiency nitrogen fertilizers, if the growers are being used, those are standalone practices that we can quantify. I will say that those are just kind of cherries on top. Cover cropping and no-till are going to be your biggest returns for our Carbon by Indigo program. Our data burden has been reduced by almost 80%. So we've really kind of developed this process into TurboTax mode, if you will. It's kind of a term we use internally, but what was once a longer drawn out process where it may have taken some time of actual thumbing through some records and that sort of thing, we've really reduced that via software, and then also tapping into some remote sensing opportunities that we've developed over the years by building this program. We have a calculator to where you can get estimates on what you could earn based off the practices that you have currently on your fields. We're in every state in the US. And then obviously some of the buyers we've already talked about, and we also work with, you can work directly with us, but we work with over 40 plus ag partners. If you prefer to work with one of those, we could show you that way and participate through them and get some support by them as well. So if you go to the next slide, we'll keep it moving. So what crops are eligible? Obviously, we're talking Missouri today, so no worries there. But you can see a pretty expansive crop list. I think we got most crops covered. Obviously, there are some specialty markets in every state that usually we miss out on, but I think we've captured most of them on this list here. The corn, cotton, soybeans, peanuts, dry beans, rye, wheat, all available, even sunflowers and that sort of thing, sorghum as well. This on the right gives you an idea of the practices that we can quantify and monetize on the grower's behalf. It does require an eligibility window of 12-year look-back period. So you still have time between now and September 15th if you've made any of these changes post harvest 24. You still have time to get them in, get eligible, and get enrolled, and then you have plenty of time to do the data piece all through the winter. So we'll talk about that more here coming up. If you go to the next slide, please. So where are these carbon credit prices trading? Excuse me. Currently, we're averaging about $51 a metric ton on the open market. Current trades have recently gone in the $60 to $80 range, and we have line of sight to kind of keep that average at or around that amount throughout the rest of the year. So again, just a reminder, 75% of those prices always goes back to the growers' pockets with Indigo. Next slide, please. All right, so if it sounds like something you're interested in, you may have some practice changes out there that are already eligible that you could be getting potential returns on. How do you enroll? How do you get started? There's a link here that we'll share, and then I can drop it in the chat as well if for anybody that's interested. But you can go to that link. There takes you directly to a calendar, but you can also click enroll there. The 5 steps you'll need to complete are just setting up an account. That can be done with an email or even Facebook account. Identify field boundaries that you think are eligible and or want to be eligible, and indicate what practice changes you've made to them. They'll do a quick eligibility check, and then there's a contract to sign. It's done all electronically in the software. It's really kind of reduced down to a 4-step process. So it's not very difficult, but if you need help, we have resources within the software, or I can be a resource as well. If anybody ever needs help, they can contact me as well. Next slide, please. This is just another resource we'll share. If it's something you're interested in, this QR code will take you directly to that link that I've shared in the chat. And with that, we can move forward to the next one. All right, and finally, with wanting to share a little bit more. Okay, what are we offering? How does participation look throughout the year? So we'll go into a little bit more of those details. So for 2025, currently the current offer now, and this will be between now and September 15th, any grower that enrolls at least 1,000 eligible acres and successfully final files those acres in the program is eligible up to a $500 bonus payment. And that is enroll. You can enroll in that as you enroll the fields. So it's done all at the same place. It's just a separate term sheet that you sign and say, yep, I want to see if I'm eligible for this and can make it through. So again, definitely check that out if you're looking at potentially enrolling. It's just an added bonus there if you meet some of those acre minimums, but we don't have any minimum to participate. If you have less acres than that, you can still definitely participate in the program. This is just as part of the promotion that we're currently running. Next slide, please. And then our key dates and how our calendar rolls. As obviously we're up against September 3rd, 4th week. We have extended that deadline, enrollment deadline of between now and the 15th. So that is important. We can enroll at any time throughout the year, but any practices that were made, again, post-harvest 24, you'll want to make sure you get your account set up and in the system by that date. Just to make sure you can capture some returns for those practices. If not, we kind of miss that boat and we'll just be looking at future practices that'll be made going into harvest of 25 into 26. So again, just want to anchor on that from the enrollment piece. These other ones are, we have up until February to do the data piece. Indigo has a customer success team, some of the best in the business that can help you through the process. So you're never alone in it. If you get stuck or have a question, not sure why you're getting some of the questions you're getting, we have a team there that can help you through those. We do soil sample about 6 to 10% of the fields. Not every field gets selected. It's a randomized process, helps eliminate bias in our modeling. But if you do get selected for sampling, we typically try to get that done in the spring window. Try to get out of the way, stay out of the way of the growers' normal line of work. And then if we miss anything, we may come back in the fall. But again, all that is coordinated through growers. You can also communicate any windows there, but we'll be in touch if a field is selected for sampling and that sort of thing in the future. And then lastly, just the payment timeline and what we're working towards there is always key. There is a little bit of lag there, but that is because we do a pretty stringent, rigorous third-party verification process that allows us to go out and push these prices to the point that they are and provide a digital credit that you can be confident in and buyers are willing to invest in. So just wanted to share kind of, hey, how does this all work? What key dates do I need to be aware of? This is kind of, you can copy and paste this and move it forward to 2026. Indigo has now done this through 4 vintages of carbon credits. We're got line of sight to announce our 5th vintage, or reporting period is what we refer them to. And we'll start enrolling for our 7th vintage after we close out this current 6th vintage of enrolling. So just like a lot of people in ag, we are professional jugglers on the side. So we always got a number of balls or hats in the air that we're trying to wear and move through. So happy. Don't feel if you get questions or concerns about anything, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We want it to be a positive experience and we want it to be to your benefit. So happy to help with any of those types of things that arise. So, and I think that may be it. If you go to the next slide, we are ready and willing for questions. Again, would love to have this be more of a conversation. So if there are any that have popped up or raised their hand, happy to hear from them and go from there.
Yep, so I would encourage everybody to ask a question at this point in time or raise your hand for a direct question. Russell, I know from, you know, the circle enrollees that we've had over the last, this is our third sign up. So we've had two signups and then we've had our third just completed that we'll be putting cover crops in the ground this fall. A lot of individuals have used cereal rye as a cover crop before soybeans. So you had mentioned with the current Indigo program that you have a 12-month look back in terms of starting a new practice. How can some of those growers potentially participate? Can they, use mixes or change to add legumes or do something before corn? Are there ways that those individuals could still participate with your carbon program?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Alan. Absolutely. They can still participate. That's a good call out. That's one that commonly gets thrown around when we've developed something new. There's always new terms and new things to learn, and additionality, and that look back period is one of them. That's not to ice anybody out, but actually with cover cropping, you can, if you've been a solo species of what you just described, if you add a legume to the mix, that qualifies you. Also with cover cropping, it also comes with timing. Maybe you figure out you plant 7 days sooner or terminate 14 days later. If you extend the time that the cover crop is on the soil, that is an eligible practice, allowing growers who have actually done these practices before in the past to participate. So again, that's mainly around cover cropping and those practices that are also eligible in addition to adding a cover crop for the first time. So it's important to recognize that there are a multitude of ways that you can kind of find yourself getting some returns on these carbon credits.
You were muted, Alan. Could you repeat that?
Thanks, Olivia. David, hopefully your mic is open now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Um, we we actually participated in your carbon cup in 19,
Oh,
and we've been on continuous on those fields with grazing, but we do the way our operation is we pretty well locked in on only cover cropping corn acres every year. So we totally rotate every field every year, but a cover crop occurs on every field every other year.
mhm.
And we've also pretty much married to diverse mixes uh, on our cattle operation and everything, and soil health part. We just we think that really gives us the benefit. So we've been doing pretty much the same thing now since 17. And I how does that new practice thing apply to us where we like doing what we're doing, we think we're getting the maximum benefit, but we're not really changing a lot. I mean, we change species a little bit. We usually use three cereals, a couple of brassicas, a couple of legumes, and we'll rotate that a little bit, but nothing radically new adoption or anything since 17 basically. So how does that fit? How do we fit?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, David. I would say those years that if you're doing a cover crop every other year, introducing them that other year, which I know I recognize maybe it's a crop type that maybe doesn't sit well with a cover or something like that, but that is an opportunity to where you could introduce into those off years that you aren't doing covers. That's an additionality, and that would be net new carbon that you're sequestering that could be available for the offset space. The other pieces that I'm mentioning are emerging opportunities. They are real. They are. I'm reading reports. We get reports out on some of these source opportunities that we're working with the Anheuser-Busch, the Gerbers of the world, and also even some of the other ones. As other CPGs that are doing this in a pilot mode. So, what I would say to you is, if there are some edge line, like I said, adding a cover crop on those edge years where you're currently not is probably the lowest hanging fruit, but you're putting yourself in a position to capitalize on these other opportunities when all of a sudden a grain aggregator has a 45Z tax incentive to pass along on the corn. You've already got a really good CI score, and you will see opportunities from that, from the benefits where they don't have that look back period. Same thing with source opportunities. That's just more of a checklist of, did you do it? Okay, the premium's going to come when you sell that grain on that product. And honestly, we're also doing some work. Glad to hear you're in the grazing space, but not that the but on the beef side of things, like sustainably fed beef is going to be another opportunity for you all. We just have to get the programming developed and out of pilot stage and into marketable, ready to participate stage. So the real benefit, I would say, is you're doing the right thing. You're benefiting from a soil health standpoint. You're probably, could attest to that by stepping on your farm way more than I could. But there's probably some intrinsic benefits of why this system works for you as well. Maybe there's some internal cost savings there from inputs and that sort of thing that you've seen over the years. So how can you take those potential added opportunities and reinvest them into your farm? Or maybe that's where it comes from. Could you look at adding a cover crop in that off year that you're not doing a cover crop? So I know it's probably not a perfect answer, but I I'd love to be everything for everyone, but I usually fall short. So
Yeah, and
Okay,
Dave, I
thanks.
appreciate the question live. So that's great. I'm gonna go ahead and mute your line again. And just kind of to summarize then, Russell, even if in this particular case for David, there may not be a carbon opportunity, you mentioned at least two other potential opportunities as they come. One would be source, or what we call like an insetting program, where maybe somebody is trying to put a label on a product that says that this is grown with, uh, you know, conservation practices. 45Z is still kind of to be determined. That could be another opportunity for growers which have been using conservation practices for a number of years. And then one of the other questions that we got coming in from Matthew, um, you already touched on it, but the question was whether or not there are models or payments for perennial pastures and grazing management. I think you just answered it with the fact that Indigo has a pilot program. Any other color you can add to that question?
yeah, no, that's a great call out. We are working to add perennial systems to be able to be modeled in the future. We recognize there are some other organizations that are starting in that space. We've really cut our teeth in row crop, but we ask about grazing events when we capture data because we will be incorporating that in the future. Another piece of kind of goes back to having Climate Action Reserve as a governing body and a verifier for us. We have to make sure that the research that we provide to them in the white paper that comes out of a lot of universities, such as University of Missouri and others, that go into that work, we have to make sure that what we're quantifying is accurate and real. So once we get those steps completed, we have been doing those research for years. I think we're pretty close to starting to offer some of that programming for ranching systems. I just don't have a set date at this time, but I'm optimistic from what I'm hearing. Potentially within the next 6 to 12 months, we could be hearing something in those lines that Indigo is starting to offer.
Yeah, several more questions that are coming in. I know this one causes confusion because you and I have talked about this, but Carl had asked whether or not you can stack your carbon credits from Indigo with other state or federal programs. And this may not be you might not be able to give the exact answer, but I think you can probably provide some guidance here. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Alan. I always, depends on the program. So make sure you're reading into those government programs, and most of them don't eliminate you from participating in a voluntary carbon market. But we do know for certain programs like CSP, EQIP, for instance, a lot of those are cost share oriented, meaning you are submitting a plan, an implementation plan to the government body. They're approving it, and you're getting some sort of cost share payments based off of progress made on implementing those projects as you share receipts. While that will cover some of that cost of implementation, you could still leverage a voluntary carbon market like Indigo's, and what we are measuring the outcome of some of those practices that those incentivize. So those are just a couple that I know we stack well with. There's also some other kind of what we've seen in this climate smart commodity funding place that now has been rebranded to AMP, if you will. There are some programs out there that are still available, still being offered, that we stack with and we try to talk to and work with, of saying, hey, if you're getting X amount per acre to do some of these practices and it's eligible to stack, why not stack a offset program with? So I think you'll see more of those opportunities come into market, especially for those programs that maybe didn't meet some of those AMP specifications and have to find a solution that elsewhere, where in order for those growers that maybe signed up don't have some of those opportunities coming. So I think that is, yes, there are opportunities to stack those programs. Just make sure you're reading and asking the questions as you do your research to make sure you're not misstepping. But Indigo doesn't have any exclusivity outside of, obviously, if someone else is selling an offset on an open voluntary market to a buyer, you wouldn't be able to participate in another private program selling an offset and ours. So you'd have to just pick which one you'd prefer to go with.
And to be very specific, for those of you on the line that are enrolled in Circle, so in the Circle project itself, we're not monetizing the actual carbon from your practices, and so it does open up the opportunity to work with companies like Indigo to be able to. I would still recommend you work with Indigo to give it that final stamp of approval that it can be stacked together. But generally speaking, we are not monetizing the carbon value or the carbon credit through the Circle program, which does leave you open to look for other commercial opportunities. A couple questions through the chat and a couple more through the Q&A. William, I think you actually were first on the list. I was going in reverse order, it looks like. We're talking row crops today, Russell, but does Indigo have anything dealing with forest land for carbon credits?
Great question. No, not currently. We've been in talks with some other voluntary forestry companies, maybe with some referral setups, recognizing that landowners are landowners. I come from a family of them, so they often have some of those forestry resources out there. We are not, while our Climate Action Reserve works in forestry projects, we are not collaborating or doing any sort of forestry at this time. Really kind of focused on driving returns for row crop farmers and eventually ranchers, but also kind of seeing that already with some of the ranchers we work with that do row cropping as well. So the short answer is no, not at this time, but we would be open to some collaboration if it ever comes our way in the future. I just don't see Indigo right now ever being like, hey, we're going to start modeling some forestry as well. We really view ag, it's here, it's now. You're going to do this process year in, year out. It feeds the world. It's honestly a little bit more of a impact than forestry, whereas forestry is more of a long-term opportunity and definitely has an impact, but it's a little bit of a 15 to 20 year opportunity.
Just so you know, Russell, the questions are getting more difficult versus easy.
No worries.
One of the questions that came in through the chat was essentially you noted the value of carbon credits now and that Indigo passes along 75%. So that would translate to $50 to $60 per credit. How does that potentially translate in Missouri from your experience in terms of farmers that are using cover crops as an example, that just start using cover crops so they meet the additionality requirement? What might that look like from a payment perspective?
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest way to kind of frame this up, I have some of this information at hand that I can share, but what we've seen with the effect size, depending on what part of the world, if we're talking Missouri growers, you're looking at, all right, so if we're looking at just cover cropping, our averages are about $15 an acre in the state of Missouri currently. If you're looking at potentially two practices on a field, the biggest example is cover crop and no-till being introduced. You're looking at about $19 to $20 on average per acre of what that is based off our latest modeling run, what we call reporting period 5. I want to say our effect size, we are conservatively estimating this. We're wanting to level set expectations. So we're actually seeing increases in our effect size. And so hopefully as as we learn more data, more information year to year, the modeling gets more accurate, and then we are able to kind of hone in and do some more hard numbering. But what I just shared with you from the state of Missouri, those are averages growers are making from carbon by indigo for what I just said, cover cropping and no-till.
That's great. So I think Russell, we touched on this earlier, but it's one of those questions that let's just ask it again so you can have a chance to reiterate. The question was, do we have to have a change of practice to qualify? I've grown rye as a cover crop following soy for several years. Is changing the cover crop mix an option to qualify for Indigo's
Yes.
current program?
Yep, simply adding a legume. And so again, we don't even tell you which legume to add. You could look at a clover. I've been asked, could we add a soybean? Again, it's your farm, it's your field. If it's a legume and it meets the criteria, we can model it and you'd be eligible if you add something to the mix.
And we have a good question coming in on the market side, on the demand side for carbon credits, and that is that what incentive do companies, the ones that you've mentioned, in terms of the Googles or Microsofts of the world, what incentives do they currently have to offset their carbon by purchasing these credits? And what do you see going into the future for the U.S.? Do you envision some type of national cap on carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas equivalents? Or what will be driving that demand or the price for carbon credits in the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I will say that on the demand side, it's a kind of another enigma or moving target of like what's the motivation. I never pretend to know everything for sure, but what I can tell you is I've mentioned artificial intelligence for a reason. Those are going to require data centers, and what I do know, regardless of what administration is, they love investments. They love developing new job opportunities. Obviously, some of that is going to come with some opportunity for these companies to be good stewards themselves. So that's where one piece of this is. Like if a organization like Meta is going to put a data center in Louisiana, they should have some things to come to the table with and investments into those communities that they're making an impact on. So it's really to make sure that they are being a good steward in the world as such. And oddly enough, it's some of the same resourcing that our farms rely on. So hopefully that we've got to get most of that benefit back to the farmers' hands. I will say all indications are like as far as 2030 is a tipping point. We have a lot of big airlines that have made some pretty big goals in this space. They're going to have to start making some large purchases of carbon credits. I will say there are some guidelines, and even in some of this purchasing in the demand space, where a company can't just. I get asked all the time, like how do we prevent companies from just being crazy emitters by just selling, just going out making a lot of damage in the environment and then just buying a bunch of carbon credits and calling it good. They actually call that greenwashing. It's already been very, very on top of thumb on hand type of stuff of saying, hey, we can't do it this way. And way we see some of those things coming is they say, hey, you can invest in carbon credits, but it can only be X amount of your portfolio. You also have to invest in scope 3 opportunities and some of those source opportunities and actually make real changes to your supply chain. And that goes into what type of buildings you're using, where are they located, what's the energy source, that sort of thing. So that's where you're going to see them start to make some significant shifts, and it's really going to be a potential for not only carbon credits, but both of ours. But we still have strong line of sight, I think, in some of these buyers that are mentioned, where we could see some potentially pretty long-term deals. And if we do what we've set out to do, a lot of other buyers will follow suit once some of those buyers have done it. And then kind of one of those slides, last piece of this, and then we can move on to the next question. But one of those slides mentioned UN nation states. So that's one thing in the U.S. Like we are U.S. Citizens and proud of it, which is great. But there is a global demand to this. Like some of these organizations that we're talking about operate globally, and some nation states are starting to make purchases of credits themselves. So That's another piece where it kind of gets lost on us on this side of things. Whereas in Europe, they've had a market, they've been doing this for a while, but where the opportunity stands is there's still an opportunity to do more, right? So.
We'll try to respect time, but if we can work one last question in. So conservation technology and practices evolve. Is persistence, and they might mean permanence, in a program guaranteed by the company until a credit is collected? When can I find out how much carbon per acre is captured, and what transparency is there regarding the value of carbon credits?
Yeah, absolutely. So we go through an RFP process on the buyer side as well. The transparency is kind of what I'm sharing. Like what I'm sharing currently is what is we're going to market with on the demand side. So we try to share that as we go. We update our carbon calculator on our website with the actual performance of the modeling. So that's out there. And to your point of how do I know, once you get in a system, have an account, we can start adding, and you do some data sharing with us, we can start adding projections of based off the data and the market prices of what you could stand to make and earn in the future. So we do a lot of that sharing on an individual account basis, knowing that every farm's different. It's hard for us to just sit there and say, hey, you're going to earn this without knowing what practices, what's your plan, kind of what data do you have to share with us, and that sort of thing. So once we have more of those details, we can get very specific to what you can earn as an individual and individual farmer. So yes, we are independent, but we're also transparent. So we tend to answer any questions as we can once we're, the information's publicly available and those sort of things.
Okay, perfect. Well, a big thanks to you, Russell, for introducing us to Indigo Ag as well as your program. So also appreciate the direct links to be able to do follow up with you. I want to make sure that everybody has the chance to sign up for next week as well, in which we're going to have a presentation from 4Grand by Bear. And I guess just really to recap, Russell, one of the things that I heard today, which I think everyone should take note of, especially because we have a lot of growers that are signed up in the Circle program that have a lot of experience with cover crops. You outlined four opportunities. The fact that the one that is here and now is the carbon credits, but you outlined a biofuels program that will be coming down the road, a water program that will potentially be coming down the road, and then the source opportunities, which are intermittent as you get those deals done. But each of those would be opportunities for growers which have been using conservation practices for a number of years. And I think that's one of the highlights today, that even if you are a grower that has experience, there are opportunities coming down the pipeline. And
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
yep. And so with that, I appreciate everybody's time and look forward to having you next week, Thursday at noon. Thank you.